Hey piggy, hey piggy, don't make me go back to that 9 to 5. Wage cut ain't no way to be alive. Don't make me go back to 9 to 5. Wage cut ain't no way to be alive. Ooh, hey piggy, just give me one more super chat. Hey piggy, just give me one more super chance. Hey piggy, just give me one more super chance. Hey piggy, just give me one. Ooh.
When I'm with my boo, 1 and 1 makes 2, then it makes 3. Yeah, we had the baby. She want Versace, she want Gucci. Gotta lay down all my bands on the Lambo, cause she don't like my Volvo, no, no. Yeah, she got a diamond grill on her baby teeth. Coolest kid in nursery, but you know, I'm not a materialist, an idealist. I flow with the transcendental argument. Reading Wittgenstein, investigate my girl philosophically. Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? I just want the money.
Hey piggy, just give me one more super chat. Hey piggy, just give me one more super chance. Hey piggy, just give me one more super chance. Hey piggy,
Yeah,
just give me one.
yeah,
Ooh.
straight up, I'm simple for you, girl. I want my heart, want you in my world. I see you in the super chat, I see you wanna go from me. I see you on the OnlyFans and you got my heart in your hand. Please don't crush it, girl, understand that I'm a simp, but I'm proud. I'm a geek, but I'm proud. And I wanna feel your breasts at a convention. I want my picture of you groping my ass to be on social media. I want my friends to see it on Discord. I'm gonna upload it to my subreddit and they all gonna see it. My friends, they gonna like it, they gonna retweet it. But I feel that it's gonna be the greatest moment of my life, and I want you to be a part of it, girl. Yeah.
Don't make me go back to that 9 to 5. Wage cut ain't no way to be alive. Don't make me go back to 9 to 5. Wage cut ain't no way to be alive. Ooh, hey piggy, just give me one more super chat. Hey piggy, just give me one more super chance. Hey piggy, just give me one more super chance. Hey piggy, just give me one. Ooh, hey piggy, just give me one more super chat. Hey piggy, just give me one more super chance. Hey piggy, just give me one more super chance. Hey piggy, just give me one. Ooh.
I can't hear ya. Let me hear you say it. Let me hear you say fuck Klaus Schwab.
I got married to a Funko Pop. Whoa. We got wedded, conjoined in a Subway shop. Whoa. I am married to my Funko Pop. Whoa. We got joined, co-writers in a Subway shop. Whoa. Fit to
vitamins and biscuits and minerals, they come to me through a tube. My whole life is spent watching on a tube.
I'm married to a Funko Pop. We got wedded, we got joined in a Subway shop. Vitamins and minerals, they come to me through a tube. Vitamins and minerals, they come from me through this here tube. I got married to my Funko Pop. We got
Oh yeah! There's only one thing that can bring this world together, and that begins with you. The word begins with you, not you. I'm gonna tell you what word it is. Usually, on the dance floor. Get that ass up. Bankers, get on the floor. Bankers, make the people poor. Bankers, get more paid. Bankers, get more name. Get more name. I wanna see your ass poor. CEOs, yeah, I'm talking to you. Get more hoes, get more paid, get more votes, get more laid. I wanna see the CEOs ruining lives to the beat. Ruin those lives in 141 BPMs. Oh yeah. Sweet cool. Sweet cool. Where's the interest rates? I wanna see the banker on the floor. I wanna see your ass poor. Make it clap. Make it fiat clap. Shake that ass. Who's reading? On the dance floor. Make the people poor. Bankers, get more paid. Bankers, get more name. Only one thing can bring this world together. Destruction of the middle class. And more fiat cash in my bank account.
Hate that you said he wasn't a top 10 quarterback? Hate
Quasimodo, Quasimodo. Got lots of bitches calling me on my mobile. Quasimodo, I got a natural flesh patch right there for my mobile. I live a life Quasimodo. My bitches be calling me Master Modo. You don't even understand this flow though. When I get older, will I still have an effed up shoulder? Quasimodo. High school kids making fun of me and call me Play-Doh. This back part right here, just this part is Play-Doh.
What's up? Welcome, everybody. It's time to step into the time machine. Go back to the 1990s. And I was a little bit iffy on whether or not I felt like doing a live stream because it's been a difficult week. This was the week that I said goodbye to my best friend of 30 years. Now I have about 3 or 4 best friends, but I think he was one of the oldest. So we had to deal with that. That was a very difficult thing this week. And I met him in art class in the 90s. So my whole thought process this whole week has basically been 90s stuff. So I feel like I've been in a time machine. And it's like a dream where I'm back in the 90s again. And there's a lot of fun, happy things about the 90s. There was some bad stuff too, obviously. So I may not be my full spurgy, energized, crazy espresso mode self, even though I do have my official X-Files espresso. This is an X-Files espresso files. See? So I'm not particularly in a bad mood. I'm in a pretty good mood. I mean, that for me this week was the first time that I'd ever lost someone really close. In the sense of like it not being kind of expected. Because when Grandma, Nana, or TT, when they're passing away, usually it's because you kind of already know because they're in bad health. But I think, when somebody much younger or middle-aged just kind of immediately passes away, you don't expect it. And so I had another friend of ours who was in our kind of immediate friend group from that time who passed away maybe 3 years ago. 2 to 3 years ago. And his was more expected because he was already in bad health. But this more recent friend was a friend I was even closer to. And he was the artist. His name was Tommy Patterson. And he was the artist for Farscape from Jim Henson. And all the Game of Thrones. And then more recently he did Graveyard Shift, which I'm not like a super comic booky person, but I always appreciated my buddy since he was such a talented artist. And so he did more recently Graveyard Shift with a guy named Phil Diaz, who's a pretty cool guy on Twitter. But Tommy's Game of Thrones were really kind of his magnum opus, I guess. That was kind of what the peak for him was in terms of comic book fame. And all of these were pretty high up on the New York Times bestseller. And so he did literally all of the Game of Thrones and all the graphic novels. And I think there's about 4. Yeah, there's like 4 volumes. So it's, quite a bit of material that he did for many years. So one thing I noticed was that when somebody really close dies that you're not expecting, you will have the first day that you learn of it, you'll feel the death. And that was something I never really experienced because, like I said, I've been blessed to not have to deal with somebody really close dying. And again, it's, other cases, obviously grandparents and people like that you kind of expect are going to pass away. But the feeling of death is a very unique feeling. And it's not just like a rational thing. You actually feel death. And it just feels like this really kind of weird emptiness. So the first day that I learned last Sunday was it was just an odd emptiness that I've never felt, probably going back to maybe when I was in high school and I was just a crazy, party guy or something. And, I didn't have any relationship with God back at that time. And so that was the last time I can remember kind of feeling that empty. But then the next day I felt better because I kind of processed that. And then we had, of course, the visitation and the funeral, and that kind of brought back a lot of the bad memories, or the feelings, I guess I should say. But then eventually there's a peace that comes. So, people talk about the grieving process and all of that. So, but that's all very real. And there's these phases, which are very interesting, but all very new experiences to me. I haven't even thought about anything that it's like you're sort of doing your work all the time, and you put out your stuff and you're doing your content and you're reading books and you're writing books and doing all this stuff. And then suddenly, like, death, Grim Reaper invades your life out of nowhere. And it's a kind of it's one of those things that makes you kind of sit back and reminisce, and you get nostalgic. And, as Paul says, we do not despair, but we have hope, unlike the pagans. And the good news is that my buddy had more and more become open to Christianity over the years. He was asking some about Orthodoxy and had begun to listen to the scriptures on audio. He began wearing a cross, even which surprised me. I didn't even know that until more recently. We keep up with each other through like a chat group that me and some other people are in. So that was all, again, I guess the best news that could be had for a bad situation. But, one thing that happens when somebody that you've known or that's been close to you for that long passes away is that you just really get sort of flooded with all these reminiscent, nostalgic memories. And one of my other good buddies, me and my last best friend from high school that's still alive, we basically spent the whole week just telling stories about our friend. And one of the things that happened was that you just remember all these things that you totally forgot, stuff that was 20, 25 years ago, even 30 years ago. You're just suddenly, oh yeah, that. And it's intense too, because you can even remember these smells. Like, oh, I remember what his house smelled like, in 1995. And I remember this and that. So that, long story short, was one of the reasons why we ended up watching Pulp Fiction. Not because I actually don't think it's that great of a movie in the sense of the way everyone calls it, one of the greatest movies ever made. I think it's overhyped. It is worth analyzing, and because Quentin Tarantino is obviously such a icon of the 90s, we should definitely do an analysis of Pulp Fiction. And we've never done any Tarantino films, and that's not on purpose. It just didn't happen on my channel that we covered Tarantino yet. Kind of like we also, for a long time didn't really cover a lot of like JFK stuff, or Oliver Stone stuff like JFK, because it would fit, into the conspiracy genre, obviously. But for whatever reason, we just kind of poked around it. And the same with Tarantino. But again, I just felt like I was transported back to the 90s for the last week. And then I even saw a bunch of people, at the funeral that I haven't seen since the 90s. So we're going to talk about Pulp Fiction. And let's pull it up here. How y'all doing tonight? Yeah, the 90s was fun. There were a lot of good movies in the 90s. I feel like the 90s was really kind of the last era of pretty good movies. There's some gems in the 2000s, but then things kind of start tanking. And I think I saw even Tarantino saying something like that recently that like the 2000s or something like that. That was kind of the end of movies. And I didn't actually know that much about Tarantino. So I actually did not know. Obviously, I've followed his movies over the years. I've seen all the films, and some I like, some I do not like. But I didn't know much about his influences and his philosophy and take on film, other than just kind of secondary stuff that I gathered from, watching his canon of films. And I think, let me pull it up here. Should we go to Pulp Fiction right away, or should we kind of hang around in the 90s? What would you guys rather do? You want to go ahead and do Pulp Fiction, or you want to hang around and check out some of the other artifacts of the 90s so that, one thing I want to say, though, before we get into it is that I didn't realize that Tarantino was a Brian De Palma superfan. So he was obsessed with Brian De Palma, and that was his favorite director. And it just so happened that in the last couple years, Jamie and I kind of branched out and watched most or a lot of Brian De Palma's movies. So I actually feel like I kind of understand Tarantino a little bit better now. Now that I've kind of immersed myself in his favorite. And if you don't know, De Palma is the kind of successor, some people think, to Hitchcock. And I'm not equating De Palma with being as good as Hitchcock, so don't misunderstand me. But a lot of people make the argument, including Tarantino, that Hitchcock was not this like super philosophical, director. Really, what he was doing is what you would have gotten had he continued on, or had there been a Hitchcock of the 70s and 80s. It would have been Brian De Palma, or even the 90s. So there's an argument to be had there. And of course, if you've watched much Tarantino over the years, or many of his interviews, as I've gotten more and more into them recently, he loves to debate and do analysis of film. Actually kind of likes to do what we do. He doesn't usually go into philosophical depth, maybe a little bit here and there. There's some philosophical depth in Pulp Fiction that's worth discussing that we'll get into. But certainly not anywhere near like the level of what we do. And oddly enough, there's actually a little more esoteric, occultic kind of depth in the De Palma canon than there is in the Quentin Tarantino, unless I've just missed things, which are entirely possible. Enough so that I included a De Palma section in Esoteric Hollywood 3. Now, we mentioned Black Dahlia, obviously, in Esoteric Hollywood 1. That's a key esoteric, occultic thing relating directly to esoteric Hollywood itself, as in actual Hollywood. Referring, as you know, to the ritual murder of Elizabeth Smart and the Black Dahlia case. And that gets into George Hodel, Man Ray, all of these sort of weirdo artists of that time, and in that scene, hanging out with John Huston and others. And I think not many people know that Orson Welles was for a time a suspect in the Black Dahlia case. And so I listened to several Tarantino interviews, and I know that obviously everybody will have this sort of critique, I'm sure we all would, of his sort of sort of ridiculous leftism signaling, which is kind of preposterous. Especially given what's in his movies. So there's some sort of weird double standard hypocrisy going on with Tarantino. I'm not really sure why he doesn't just own up to the fact that the movies are not social justice films, even though he tries to portray himself as this like super anti tiny mustache man person. So we'll get into that in a minute, but I do think Quentin Tarantino is a well-read person. He actually, if I recall, I remember reading years ago that he had studied literature pretty in depth at some point, And if I recall, he's from Tennessee. Let's see if that's correct. So he's another Tennessee boy. Let's check on that. I'm correct. So Quentin Jerome Tarantino is from Knoxville, Tennessee. I remember hearing that and I couldn't believe that. I was like, wait, he's from Tennessee? I heard that back in the 90s. I thought that was pretty crazy. But Tarantino is interesting too because the story, if I remember, was that he moved to Hollywood and was basically like a movie store blockbuster clerk for many, many years and was just sort of obsessed with film and committed himself to studying film, screenplays, literature. And I think he even studied, if I recall, he even studied Shakespeare. So I think he was pretty serious about the craft. And in one of the interviews, he says that he was so obsessed with Brian De Palma that he created a scrapbook of Brian De Palma scenes, films, interviews, and pictures. And one time he was at a film screening and Brian De Palma was there and he could have met him, but he chose not to because he wanted to have a movie made before he met Brian De Palma. And then later they subsequently had an interview where he tells Brian De Palma all this, which is kind of funny. Just he's such a sort of a quirky weirdo, I guess is the best way to put it. And I think I do have a really good Quentin Tarantino impression. If I get in the mood, I may just sort of immediately step into that alternate persona when we get there. But a little bit more on Brian De Palma because there's a lot of weird stuff going on in Brian De Palma films. I'm not even sure what to make of all of it. In fact, recently we watched, and I'm not recommending all these, but we watched Femme Fatale, we watched Body Double, and Raising Cain, and Dressed to Kill. And those are all relevant because they're explicitly, in the case of, for example, Raising Cain, they make references to trauma-based mind control and MKUltra. And so if you don't know, John Lithgow plays a multiple personality loon who was part of some sort of government project by a father who was a mad scientist. And so they were experimenting on programming the different personality alters in the John Lithgow character in the film. I really appreciate the sort of dream sequence way that Raising Cain was filmed. I was actually impressed. It was a lot better film than I thought it was going to be. But De Palma is known for these sort of dream sequence trippy scenes. There's a really famous one in Femme Fatale, which I don't think most people like. Femme Fatale, I don't think it did very well, but it has these memorable sequences in it. And Body Double is probably the most interesting in that regard because it deals with the prawn element and a society obsessed with kind of voyeuristic themes, which is also somewhat part of Hitchcock. And a kind of a dissociation fugue state that the protagonist ends up in Body Double. And I won't spoil Body Double because I don't know if I'd recommend it. It's a little much unless you're sort of, don't let your kids see it. But one thing I do appreciate about Dressed to Kill is that Michael Caine plays a killer. And the type of killer that Michael Caine is in the movie is totally not PC for today. So if you're looking for a good accidentally non-PC movie, Dressed to Kill is a good one because, and it's actually really well done, I think. It's got a great twist, and Michael Caine's really good in that. I've yet to see Blown Away. I've been told that I do need to see that. I forgot The Fury. We also did a breakdown of The Fury. I put The Fury in Esoteric Hollywood 3 as well because there's, again, sort of explicit Montauk Project, MKUltra Project, Stargate type stuff going on in The Fury. This is sort of Brian De Palma's version, I guess, of X-Men meets The Exorcist. So The Fury is actually worth watching. I don't know if I'd say it's a great movie, but there's some really weird esoteric themes in it. It begins with this staged TERROR event in Israel That is, I think, very relevant. Everybody, I'm sure, has seen Carrie. That's obviously Stephen King's high school horror with, pig blood and all that. Carrie is an interesting film. I don't know if I would say it's a well done horror movie, but obviously probably the best is Scarface. I think Scarface is a really amazing film. Mission Impossible 1 is actually a really good film too. Mission to Mars is terrible. Obviously, I think it's completely stupid. Carlito's Way, interesting. I love, mafia gang films. And, Scarface is a classic, but Carlito's Way is terrible. It's no good. I've never seen Bonfire of the Vanities. I think I saw Casualties of War a long time ago. Untouchables, believe it or not, if you go back and watch that, it is unwatchable. It is so stupid and just completely preposterous that I was shocked, because I remember when the Untouchables came out that, it was like touted as like the next big thing. It is unwatchable. I know also that there's some sequence that's very famous in Hi Mom with Robert De Niro that Tarantino's a huge fan of. I've not gotten around to watching Hi Mom. I don't really care about boomer counterculture stuff, except for insofar as it might overlap with the Laurel Canyon Dave McGowan material. In that regard, I would find it interesting. But we actually do eventually, Jamie and I, want to get to, what would you call them? Like boomer, biker, counterculture, Abby Hoffman, Tim Leary type shit. We want to do some kind of a analysis of those, because there's a series of films like that, Easy Rider type movies, and there's one with Jack Nicholson, I always forget the name of it, where it's about tripping acid. It's Jack Nicholson, Bruce Dern. It's famous. It's not a very good movie, but it's famous because it's like one of the first films about tripping acid, and the movie's supposed to be really trippy. Probably somebody in the audience will remember it. I don't remember the name of it, but we'll probably take a look at that one too when we get around to it. Yeah, it's like Jack Kerouac type stuff. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Memento is not a Brian De Palma movie. What are you talking about? Memento is a Christopher Nolan movie. If you guys would hit like and share. The Trip, yeah, thank you. It's called The Trip. And so Easy Rider, The Trip. We want to do some of those. Yeah, that's right. Jack Nicholson co-wrote that. We want to do some of these boomer biker, let me hit the road. It's like boomer male version of Eat, Pray, Love. Right? That's what that is. Anyway, so that is apparently the super mega background to Quentin Tarantino, which I did not know. And Tarantino, of course, began with Reservoir Dogs. There's elements I like of Reservoir Dogs, and there's elements of it that there's just a little too much for me to even watch. But just a quick kind of rundown of the Tarantino corpus, and then we'll get into Pulp Fiction. And I'm a little bit, I wouldn't say low energy, I'm just a little bit I'm in this sort of reflective mood and mode today, so. But I still wanted to do the live stream, so hope you guys are having fun. This is more of like a relaxed NPR style live stream. You guys like that? I know I'm not doing my normal spurgy stuff or whatever. My spazzing out, as they may say. Do you guys like this sort of chill vibe? We've only got 380 people here, so I guess nobody was in the 90s. People were like, people said leave that Quentin Tarantino in the 90s. I don't want none of that. Do you like this? Do y'all like this chill stream vibe? Sometimes it's okay to not be being ridiculous. You know what I mean? sometimes it's okay to not be retarded. I want you guys to understand that today's message is it's okay to not be retarded. So this is just more chill and reflect, more of an NPR style Jay Dyer today. Taking a look at the Tarantino corpus. I'm split on kind of whether Reservoir Dogs is that good. Reviewing Pulp Fiction, as we'll talk about here in a moment, was I think it's a little overhyped. It has a lot of positives to it. I just don't know if it's one of the best movies ever made. You know what I mean? And almost everybody puts it in the top, best movies ever made. I just don't know. It's going back and watching it. I probably hadn't seen Pulp Fiction in probably 15 years. And rewatching it, I would say it's really funny. It was more of a dark comedy than I remembered or expected. I just don't know if it's one of the best movies ever made. In fact, I actually think Jackie Brown is underrated. Jackie Brown's a really good movie. I really like Kill Bill 1 and 2. I think they're both really good. Of course, Planet Terror, I think that was Robert Rodriguez did that, but Tarantino produced it. And then Tarantino did Death Proof. A lot of people hate on Death Proof. I think Death Proof is pretty good. I think Stuntman Mike is a pretty funny character. I do not like Inglourious Bastards at all. I think it's really bad. Django, it was okay. It was funny. Had its moments. Calvin Candy is a funny character. Hateful Eight, I thought was pretty good. It's not a movie you want to watch a lot. But I remember watching it when it came out, and I thought it was good. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I thought was really good. And it almost kind of edges over into the Dave McGowan Laurel Canyon type scene stuff. So that I appreciated. In fact, when Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out, we covered it at the time, and we addressed all that. We talked about, the Manson stuff, these different ages of Hollywood. And because, Tarantino is kind of a movie buff like myself, I think there are a lot of areas where I do vibe with Tarantino, especially when it's something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But again, a lot of the ones that it's sort of, for me, it's sort of a flip. Like all the ones that people love are the ones I don't really care for. And the ones that people sort of dismiss and hand wave are the ones I actually like better. So, I was trying to remember what his exact award structure was. So he got Palme d'Or Film Award for screenplay for Reservoir Dogs. Okay. He also wrote and starred in Dusk Till Dawn, which, Dusk Till Dawn's okay. It's kind of, tongue-in-cheek, fun vampire movie. I don't think it's anything exceptional or amazing. And I don't really understand what his fixation is with blaxploitation stuff. I guess he just thinks it's funny, which is fine. I think it's funny too. But it's almost like, okay, the tropes kind of get old after you do them for like all of your 90s movies. You know what I mean? It's like it's just over and over and over. And a slave revenge spaghetti western, I don't know. To me, that's kind of... It's almost like he's just kind of recycling some of the same tropes and themes. You know what I mean? Into different dressing. And for me, that's a little annoying. It gets a little bit old. But shout out to Tennessee Boy for making it to, I guess, to being one of the most famous directors. Also, I would add too, with that whole 90s vibe going on, and then he won, didn't he win an Academy Award for something? Two Academy Awards and a bunch of nominations. Let's see. This doesn't even list what he won the awards for. Anyway. So, also, the connections and people in his circles are fascinating too. I think, You know, Uma Thurman was his muse, I think, for many, many years. I think that, were they ever officially married? I don't think they ever were. But I think they had a long relationship. Let's see if they were ever married. So they had a relationship for many years. There was some on-set accident in Kill Bill that was something that she was angry about for many years, and I think eventually sort of forgave him over whatever. But I bring that up just because Uma Thurman is an interesting character because her, as we've talked about, her parents are Buddhist scholars and activists. So her dad, Robert Thurman, runs Minla House, which is this sort of Buddhist retreat center, and they work at and run the like official U.S. Buddhist like office, like whatever that is. Let me show you what I'm talking about. And you'll see why this is interesting here in a moment. I'm not trying to be overly conspiratorial. I'm not alleging that Robert Thurman is some sort of agent or operative. I don't know that. But what is interesting is that he's, I think, the only American person that has ever been given the title of like Lama or some sort of, he has some special Buddhist title, right? I forget the exact title that he was given, but Thurman was ordained by the Dalai Lama in 1965, the first American Buddhist of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And they run Tibet House, which is this cultural preservation center in New York, which is a 501c3. And it's closely connected to the Dalai Lama. And the only reason that I'm bringing this up again is that I'm not alleging evil. I don't know if anybody's involved in it. But what I do know is that Free Tibet was used as a kind of a CIA cover and a soft power kind of operation. Going all the way back to, well, I think the 70s. Yeah. Program ended after Nixon tried to establish the closer relations in 1972. This is the older anti-government Tibet program. I don't think, by the way, just because this program ended in the 1970s, that all of that necessarily went away, because you can find other articles discussing the CIA Tibet program. Well, that's not it. There's New York Times articles about it because we've covered it on my channel years ago. CIA's canceled war, CIA Free Tibet, cultural movement. Here it is. CIA gave aid to the Tibetan exiles. And this had to do with the Cold War and Communist China. All right, so it makes sense why the CIA would be involved in this. But it's just interesting that you have these Hollywood connections because, of course, David Lynch in the 90s also seemed to be very interested in the Free Tibet stuff with the character of Dale Cooper. In Twin Peaks, Dale Cooper is a big proponent of Free Tibet. And if you don't remember, I just found on my Twitter, I posted on Twitter the other day, in fact, that the Gateway process, right? You guys remember the Gateway process? The documents that were recently declassified about the CIA's research into meditation, biohacking, and feedback. What else is in there? Remote viewing. It also discusses transcendental meditation. So TM, although that is typically connected to like yogis, right? In the Gateway process documents, the CIA was very interested in the techniques and studies of transcendental meditation as well. Now, you're probably familiar with the Beatles. I don't know if you've ever heard of that band, but the Beatles had a big connection and fascination with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who's of course one of these booger whistle yogis over here like Osho. And when we covered the David Lynch theme, I actually mentioned this the other day, the Lynch stories. Lynch says that for him, it's this process by which he sort of meditates and then goes into his unconscious and then tries to pull out ideas and then bring them up to, the conscious waking state and all that. And that's because he's, this longtime student of these yogis and transcendental meditation. And I don't know exactly the extent to which there is an MKUltra connection, but it's definitely there with the declassification of these, of the gateway process documents. If you don't believe me, I'll show you. The documents also are kind of bizarre. I mean, I don't even know if we know exactly what all this gibberish is about. So it's from the 1980s. So this is an 1983 document, but you'll notice that the first thing mentioned is hypnosis. And of course, hypnosis played a big role in early MKUltra studies. We've covered that in depth in many books that we've analyzed, the Walter Boert book, the John Marks book. But you'll notice the third thing mentioned is right here, transcendental meditation. So TM played a key role in whatever the heck these documents are talking about. And supposedly something to do with the Kundalini psychosis and these different hertzes and cycles and vibrations. It's somehow supposed to like bridge the left and right hemispheres of the brain. That's the idea behind some of those. Then it goes into biofeedback. So again, whether this was successful or not, I don't know. But the CIA and the Army at least had an intense interest in this, as well as remote viewing and all the Stargate stuff, going back to 60s, 70s, and 80s. So there's the gateway process. And I'm not saying that David Lynch was in the CIA. I don't know that. I'm just pointing out the overlaps and the interesting themes and connections here. That's all I'm saying. By the way, if you want to support the stream, you can do so through Super Chats. You can do a Super Chat through Streamlabs still, or you can do a Super Chat through YouTube. As you guys know, we are remonetized now. It's been a tremendous blessing. I never thought we would be remonetized, so that was a huge surprise when that happened. But how did we get onto all this? Oh, I was talking about the interesting connections with Tarantino's circles, and I was going to mention as well that Robert Thurman is also the director of what was it called? The Menla House, which is a Buddhist retreat center in upper New York area. Yes, here we go. So it's a project of Tibet House spearheaded by Robert and Nina Thurman. Nina is Uma's mother. It's a retreat center health spa in the Catskill Forest Preserves. Menla is committed to bringing authentic Tibetan Buddhism. Dalai Lama is a fan of it. And this, of course, mentions some of his studies and research. And is he from Colombia? Yeah, Colombia is, again, I'm not alleging that he is in the CIA. I don't know that, but Colombia does have a lot of, CIA professors and connections. So, Menla is an interesting thing. And I was actually, believe it or not, somebody invited me to go up to this community because apparently wherever this is, Catskills or something, I've never been up that way, 2 hours north of New York, this place is this interesting sort of It's almost like a continuation of Laurel Canyon, or like a continuation of, Greenwich Village circles of like boomers. So apparently there's a lot of these boomers that have moved to this area, around where Robert Thurman's retreat place is. I forget the name of this area. It's called something. I mean, it's not just Catskills, but there's a name for this city wherever they are. I don't remember. Like somebody, maybe they read Esoteric Hollywood, and they were like, "Hey, man, yeah, you should come up here and check out the, like boomer. You should come do your Eat, Pray, Love adventure up here." Now, the weird part was that the person who was inviting me, this was like 10 years ago, right? I don't even remember her name. I wasn't dating anyone, so it wasn't like, and maybe she was interested in me. I don't remember. I can't remember her name, but she was like a super conspiracy theorist woman who was a trad cat. She was a little bit older than me. And she was like, "Oh, you should come up here. You might find it interesting. It's a really interesting area." And I never did, but she's the one who mentioned that, "Oh, this is up here where Menla is, and there's all of these cool, boomer artist people up here." And I'm like, I just don't even think the boomer art people would like me. Maybe they would. I don't know. But I don't even remember the name of this area. So probably some of you people out there know about this. But anyway, we'll move on. Nobody really cares about that. But it is interesting, these sort of underground communities that not many people know about. Catskills. Yeah, I've never been to the Catskills, so I don't know anything about it. But thank you guys for the super chats. Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. I also don't actually know that much about Buddhism. It's not a thing I know a whole lot about. I watched multiple documentaries on Tibetan Buddhism and some of the history of it, but I don't know that much about this subject. So it's not something that I can really... I mean, I know that there's some commonalities with most of the Far Eastern religions that we can critique and kind of interact with when we do a lot of the open debates or whatever, but I don't know a whole lot about Buddhism. I know that it's kind of atheistic. I know a lot of the basics. Malin Keisner, $5. You did a great impression of the Pay Piggy guy. That's because I'm the Pay Piggy guy. So I don't know what you mean. But thank you for that, Martin. Arthur Pappas, $5. Jay, you're the man. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Storm the Cat, $10. Do you like Autechre? They're a good electronic band from the 90s. Condolences on your loss. Thanks, dude. I've not heard that, although it's interesting because I've heard a lot of the 90s electronica. I mean, that was kind of my thing. I still listen to a lot of 90s electronica, so I'll have to check them out. JT777, $5. Have you watched Severance? I did watch season 1. I really liked overall season 1. I was impressed. Definitely, obviously, a lot of MK Ultra, multiple personality type divides in the people's consciousness going on. It's kind of pretty clear. And it's also corporate. Most people we don't think about MK Ultra being corporate. We think of it, the CIA and the government. No, I think a lot of this stuff, insofar as it still exists, is actually kind of privatized. That was the last chapter in Black Gold Spies, the very last chapter of the book that we just read on British intelligence. The last chapter talked about MK Ultra basically being done now, at least post Gulf War, by private corporations. And he mentions a couple of those in the last chapter. If you subscribed as a member, watch the part 2 to Black Gold Spies, and we cover the private corporations that are involved in that. But JT says that season 2 of Severance is like watching early seasons of Lost. Hopefully it will end better. They mentioned the Montauk Project. Hey, that's fascinating because I just mentioned Montauk too. But yeah, I think that children being experimented on, that's mentioned by John C. Lilly in his metaprogramming book. There's definitely some truth to that. I've watched some things on Montauk Project. That was also part of the basis for Stranger Things. And yeah, I don't think there's anything there. I don't think there's any doubting that occurs. John Keylor 5 Canadian. Orthodox is good, but Catholics have flash and fash, and probably not all of us are going to hell. Well, you know, I appreciate your super chat and your generosity, but I think your super chat betrays a lot of the mistaken bases for why people are attracted to Tradcat stuff. Having flash, I mean, I don't even know what that means. A bunch of Latin exterior like stuff, Mary statues. I mean, what does that even mean? The flash, I don't even know. And the fash, I don't understand why that's something that you're proud of. I mean, as Orthodox, we're not fascist. I mean, the traditional governance of model that the church has accepted is monarchy, not fascism. So I don't know why that's something to be proud of. Jack asks us $5. Tradcats? Question mark. Furries are degens. Got to shift the O'Furton window there. Will you support based furries? Absolutely not. Appalachian Man, $10. JD, feel vindicated by the recent findings concerning the USAID scandal. The very last live stream was entirely about me being vindicated, so I hope you all watched it. Now, it turns out that when I played the Whitney Cummings clip, unfortunately, it actually blocked the video. So I had to have that edited out for the video to play. So if you missed it, and I think a lot of people did because it didn't get promoted in the algorithm once it gets dinged for copyright, the live stream right here, USAID and Infinity Fraud, is about my vindication through much of the USAID information that's coming out. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. Now, let's see. O'Brien's Kayak. I love this deep stuff and I love the chill vibe. Keep it up. Yeah, you know, speaking of USAID and all of that material, one of the things we talked about in that live stream pretty extensively was F. William Ingdahl's books, because F. William Ingdahl's book, Full Spectrum Dominance, was the first one that I read that came out in 2009, and that's the first book I read critiquing things like NGOs, think tanks, foundations, such as USAID, that are covers for everything from black ops to money laundering. And so, you know, I was aware of that since 2009. And if you remember back in the day, Lord Voldemort used to have F. William Ingdahl on constantly back in the day. And I remember all those interviews and all that information that he was pushing, which is all correct. And then when I interviewed Ingdahl and I posted that on the community tab, this also covers the NGOs, think tanks, foundations, fronts that are used for all those same types of operations, including missionaries. So yeah, I definitely feel vindicated. And turns out that Ingdahl interview is almost 10 years old. So it's been a decade of interviews with the premier guy who wrote the books about this topic. But I knew about this even before Lost Hegemon 10 years ago. So 2009 is about what? 15 years ago. But the reason I bring up Ingdahl is that he talks about Free Tibet in Full Spectrum Dominance as one of these operations. So I learned about that from Ingdahl. So no, that doesn't mean I'm saying that Uma Thurman is a programmed CIA MKUltra assassin. Speaking of the Hawk Thurmans, the Ethan Hawke, Maya Hawke version of the Flannery O'Connor movie was really good. I didn't know how they were going to be able to handle that and navigate it, given the fact that Flannery O'Connor has, it doesn't bother me, but obviously a lot of the humor in her writing is not PC and deals with Southern black-white relationships, shall we say. So I was a little nervous that they weren't going to be able to handle that in the film. But amazingly, they navigated it perfectly, and they did really well. So they actually tied in most of Flannery O'Connor's short stories into the life story, and Maya Hawke plays her very well. And they did it in a really clever way. So sort of like it's kind of going through her life as a writer, and then there'll be these sequences where they kind of shift over into what's going on in her head, which is the ideas for the short stories. And it has some really funny moments. If you are a Flannery O'Connor fan, as we are over here, obviously we've done live streams where we've broken down Wise Blood. And I didn't realize that Ethan and Maya Hawke were such fans of Flannery O'Connor, but the movie is called Wildcat. And if you are into Flannery O'Connor, you would
Hold
really
on, before you pay for yet.
It was really well done, and again, it really surprised me how good they did with it. And amazingly navigated that stuff without it being too, like, it wasn't woke, but it also wasn't like they navigated it well. That's all I can say. So if you are interested in that, I do recommend this movie. It's good. Also, too, I was watching, those Criterion Closet. It's called Wildcat. It's the life of Flannery O'Connor. Some of those Criterion Closet pick videos popped up, and I watched about, 5 or 6 of them. And most people's choices were horrendous. But the only people's choices that I kind of vibed a little bit with was Maya and Ethan Hawke and Andrew Garfield, believe it or not. There was like the only 2 people that had like cool selections from the Criterion Closet. Like everybody else's selections were just like awful. Like, oh my gosh. And the worst of all, which surprised me, was Denis Villeneuve. I would have thought Denis Villeneuve, given that he has made some pretty good movies, that he would have had a pretty good taste when it came to the Criterion Collection, but his were just like not at all what I would have chosen. Anyway, let's get over here to Pulp Fiction. Now that we've kind of given this, I guess I should mention one more thing before we do Pulp Fiction, and that is the recent Joe Rogan, Roger Avery, and Quentin Tarantino. And I've still not watched this whole thing, but what I did watch was the discussions of the Eyes Wide Shut material. And obviously that's the most relevant, over here on our channel. And, Avery believes that Eyes Wide Shut was altered and that it did have potentially more damning material. Now, that could just be his pet theory. But Tarantino was on here with him as well. And I think Avery, co-wrote Kill Bill and some of the Tarantino classics.
Complex mathematics in his spare time.
I do complex mathematics in his spare time. Nothing wrong with that. No, yeah, he's a weird guy, but he was also, I think, thinking 3 steps ahead of everybody at any kind of given moment. I mean...
No, the other thing that's annoying about this, too, is that, I get inbox messages from Vivian, and she will not... I can't get her to do an interview. I wish she would do an interview, because I feel like she could clear up some of the questions that are out there. You know what I mean?
To be honest, I was just thinking, I just pulled my script from Eyes Wide Shut. I had a script that was from set, and I was reading it over the weekend, and I saw that it has this, I've known this for a long time, but I started really thinking about it over the weekend. It's missing a narration. It's missing a third-person narration that was originally in the movie. And that's because the movie was recut and changed after his death. and they will deny it, but it's a.
So I'm not going to play this. I'll give you this clip if you want to watch it. If you missed it, we covered this on a live stream a few days ago, or excuse me, a few weeks ago. So here is this link if you want to watch Roger Avery talking about this. Let me clear out some of this 90s junk over here. Is my computer freezing out? What the heck? I think I've got too many windows open here. So let me close some of these 90s windows. Everybody's being tortured with 90s stuff tonight. What's going on? The stream keeps freezing up. Let's try this again. Jack Askus $2 says, I need more Dyer Wave right now. Have a good stream. Yeah, I've been thinking about doing some more cringecore. I don't know about Dyer Wave because most of the Dyer Wave is from our Amid the Ruins 1453 buddies over there at that channel. And he hasn't really made much in a while. Maybe he will sometime soon. Dr. Grumble's $10. Jay, I appreciate your content, book recommendations. I just got done reading Changing Images of Man and have Anatomy of Witchcraft on the way from your keynote video. Oh, cool. Yeah, I want to get to Changing Images of Man, Toynbee's America and World Revolution book. And I've got a couple more Global Elite books at the other residence that I want to get to. Jonah and the Trout, $5. What is your favorite fish? Swordfish, I guess. I don't know. That is literally a question I've never thought about. My favorite fish. All right, welcome. Did we just lose a bunch of people? I don't understand. The streams are always cutting in and out here. There's nothing like, doesn't matter how many times you try to get it fixed and call the people out here, like they don't, it just nothing ever gets fixed. So there's essentially no point in even caring about it. Let's get into it. So Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino's second outing. It wins the Palme d'Or. It wins the Cannes Film Festival. The first thing that I thought of when I saw Pulp Fiction for the first time in about 15 years the other night was the movie itself is a really interesting encapsulation of a bunch of 90s trends. So as you're watching the movie and you see like this infatuation with a 70s aesthetics, styles, you see, for example, Samuel L. Jackson playing Julius as this sort of like Shaft, Dolomite type of character, right? He's not 90s, except that the 90s had a fascination with the 1950s and the 1970s. There was also kind of a 60s era too. If you remember D-Light, right? Groove is in the Heart. The entire D-Light video is really an homage to the 1960s, but it also features Bootsy Collins from P-Funk, Parliament, which is also very 70s. So the soundtrack itself, and this is something that's kind of been forgotten, is that in the 1990s, soundtracks were really big for movies especially. And a movie could actually bring a song back from the dead if it had a popular enough soundtrack. And in the 1990s, when the soundtrack for Pulp Fiction came out, it was a huge hit. Everybody I knew had this soundtrack. Everybody played it. The Pulp Fiction soundtrack was its own vibe, and it pretty much created some of the most iconic 90s stuff forever, right? Like, right? that will always be remembered. You hear it. I mean, Alex Jones plays it to this day. You hear the sound, the Pulp Fiction soundtrack kicking off. The image, I think probably one of the most iconic images, probably the most famous poster and image, or one of the most famous, is the Uma Thurman Pulp Fiction pictures. And it turns out there was actually a whole promo series of these that were shot. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Yes, these right here. So there was actually a whole ton of these that were shot, these promos of her on the bed smoking the cigarette with what are these sort of Pulp Fiction detective magazines. Here's one. I was trying to see what she's reading. It looks like she's reading some detective fiction. And what surprised me was that when I watched the movie, there's not really any detective stuff going on. There's nothing detective about this. There's no detectives. There's no law enforcement really involved in it, as you would expect, which is interesting because there is a neo-noir theme obviously going on here. But the film almost entirely deals with the criminal side, except for obviously the Butch character, the Bruce Willis character. Pretty much the rest of the film is people involved in criminal activities and organizations. And this was the first time I'd ever watched the movie and actually paid attention to and kept up with the chronology of the plot. So I've seen the movie many, many times since the 1990s, saw it in the theater when it came out. But this was literally the first time that I actually watched the movie and understood the chronology of what was actually going on and how it ties together. And I did appreciate that. So it was something that that in that sense, it was new to me. I also, for the first time, paid attention to all the dialogue. This was the first time I watched Pulp Fiction with the subtitles on so that I could actually see the entire dialogue. And I think the writing was pretty good. He did really good with the writing. One thing I didn't care for, we'll get into the symbolism of the film in a minute. One thing I didn't care for was that going back and watching this, these supposedly pithy dialogue about mundane facts and objects was over the top. In the 90s, okay, that's cool. You've got two gangsters arguing over Big Kahuna burgers. You've got two gangsters arguing over, at the very beginning, by the way, foot massages. Interesting. Quentin Tarantino. And I bring that up because, of course, everybody talks about how Tarantino probably has some sort of thing going on. Or at least that's the rumors. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's funny. We were making jokes in some of my chats with my buddies today. Should we call him Quinto Tarantino? Should we call him Quentin Tarantino? Or Quentin Tendentino? Anyway, you can come up with all your own creative variations in your free time. Pope Biscuit, $10. I promise you some of these pay piggy bucks on the last stream, and I will not be made into a liar, especially after prayers. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you. Appreciate that, man. You guys keep this channel afloat with your generous pay piggies. And welcome to the new members. We got, we got one new member tonight. Anyway, so it encapsulates 90s trends, including, and I did not notice this until this viewing, and actually paying attention, rockabilly and 50s. So when they go to Jackrabbit Slims, there's a lot going on with Americana, rockabilly, Marilyn Monroe, Buddy Holly, Elvis. All of that is there intentionally. Why? Well, my only theory on this is that, Butch is just a straight up American, right? The Bruce Willis character is kind of represents America. So there's a lot of Americana in the film because Butch kind of ends up being, I guess you could say, the hero. And he's the hero because you have the story with the background of Christopher Walken and the watch and all this, which is all just supposed to be pure comedy, right? This watch in his ass. Your father's ass. This watch was in his ass. That is intended, I think, to express America, Americana, patriotism. And so from the very inception, Bruce Willis's Butch character is kind of propagandized, you could say, with this absurd element of Americana wrapped up in a watch that had been stuck in two dudes' butts for many years, which is just supposed to be purely comedic. It's dark comedy. And that explains why when Bruce Willis is about to flee the country with his French girlfriend, she forgot to grab the watch. She didn't understand why this mattered. But for some reason for him, this was so important. And he flips out, right? Has this fit, throws the TV when she forgets to grab the watch. And so he has to go back to his apartment to get it. When he goes back, of course, is when he shoots Vincent Vega. Because Vincent Vega is contemplating and thinking about his life when he's sitting on the toilet and reading some ridiculous book. And that's because he had this conversation with Samuel L. Jackson about miracles and the existence of the supernatural. So there was a little bit more philosophy and theology and symbolism going on than I remembered. And that's the key point that I think is the most fascinating element of the film, is the fact that I never noticed that the purpose beyond the sort of theme of Bruce Willis getting away from Marcellus Wallace is that Vincent Vega and Julius continually have these debates which end up eventually being about God. So the debates start about mundane things, kahuna burgers, men, women. He's going to take Marcellus Wallace's wife out, Uma Thurman, they're going to go out, but he's worried because, the last guy that took her out, Marcellus Wallace ended up killing that guy, or he threw him out of a window and now he has a speech impediment. So they have this argument about whether he should take her out or not, and that's classic noir, right? Taking the gangster's girlfriend out always leads to a series of problems in any noir film, and in many noir films, right? It's the one with Rita Hayworth is a classic of this, I think, where the guy dates the gangster's girlfriend, Rita Hayworth, and craziness ensues. I think it's Rita Hayworth. So the other thing I noticed too was that this theological debate ends up being about this weird series of events that has transpired, this sort of domino effect that leads to the crazy guy who's actually the T-R-A-N-Z Arquette. He comes out of the room of the drug house and he shoots at both Vincent Vega and Julius, and the bullets miss them. And this convinces Samuel L. Jackson, the Julius character, that God does exist because there's no other explanation for that. So they have this dialogue, this debate about whether miracles are even possible. And the Vincent Vega, the Travolta character, is essentially committed to pure physicalism, pure naturalism, and the impossibility of divine intervention or God or anything like this. And ironically, he ends up dead, right? But the whole point seems to be at the end of the film, which, as you know, is the beginning of the film, is Julius coming to the conclusion that he must repent from this life of being a hitman, and that he must now accept that it's time to change because God does exist, and he's actually seen this inexplicable salvation, right, where he should be dead. And so he no longer fears death. He stands up to the two scruffy British, Tim Roth and the nasty skanky chick who are going to rob the diner. Julius stands up to them and figures out that essentially he's the shepherd, because of this odd misquoted passage from Ezekiel. As you guys know, the passage is oddly misquoted. I don't exactly know why it's misquoted. Ezekiel 25:17 is, I will execute vengeance upon them with furious rebukes, and they will know that I am the Lord when I shall lay my vengeance upon them. I don't know why he reads more. It's like meshed up and not a very accurate quote. But the other thing I noticed was that if you recall in the scene when they arrive after having accidentally shot the black guy in the face, they arrive at Mr. Wolf's, at Jimmy's house to have it cleaned up by Mr. Wolf. And they go out back and they get sprayed down. And this is a kind of a baptism, I would say, right? Because they're both sprayed, they're both baptized, so to speak, symbolically. And this marks a turning point for both of them, because not only have they engaged in this, being hitmen in this horrible scenario that led to multiple people being killed, but this is the turning point where they're both at a crossroads. And so Julius converts and Vincent Vega does not. Vincent Vega, even though he had been baptized and washed clean, Vincent ends up dying. Butch kills Vincent, and Butch gets away. And then, of course, Samuel L. Jackson eventually, as we said, converts. So that was ultimately, I think, what's going on symbolically in the film. So then what is the briefcase? Well, you'll notice, and I didn't know this until checking for sure, when they first get the briefcase out at the drug house, the code is 666. So there is a 666. That's confirmed. It is confirmed. That's literally what the code is. The prevailing theories about what's in the briefcase, in my opinion, are completely stupid. Most people have this, I don't know why, this has been floating around the internet for many years. It's Marcellus Wallace's soul. What? No. Right? That's completely preposterous. I mean, it makes no sense. I don't know what that would mean or why. A lot of people have speculated, why does Marcellus Wallace have a Band-Aid on his neck? I don't know. Who knows? Now, supposedly, I think it's pretty clear, though, that the offer of money to Bruce Willis is because Marcellus Wallace is pretty clearly the devil character in terms of the shepherd analogy here. There's the shepherd, there's the devil, and the avenging angel and all that. I think that there's a conversion where Julius is an avenging angel, but then he becomes the shepherd. So I think if Marcellus Wallace is the devil, then really the briefcase, which again has 666 as the code when they open it, and you just see this sort of glowing gold. My guess would be, even though Tarantino just says it's a MacGuffin, my interpretation would be that the briefcase with 666 is intended to be this promise of wealth and gold. Because you notice Marcellus Wallace here, again, is offering Bruce Willis all this money. And Bruce Willis wants it, right? He does want to initially get the money. And he tells Marcellus that he's willing to throw the fight. So it represents temptation, wealth, greed, envy, gold. I mean, the most obvious thing is that when it opens up, it's like a lot of gold, right? So that, I think, is what it means. Because at the end, when Samuel L. Jackson is ready to leave the life, whatever's in that briefcase, he doesn't want it. He's ready to give that back to the devil. He's like, here, Satan, take your gold and the promise of wealth that you've offered me as a hitman or whatever. I don't want it anymore. So that's what I think it is. I think it is the promise of greed and worldly success and wealth. That's the most easy explanation. The code is 666. In the Bible, the only other reference for 666 is probably, as many of you know, not just the beast in the book of Revelation, but that Solomon increased his wealth one year to 666 talents of gold. And Tarantino, with this weird relationship to the Bible, and because he does have some knowledge of literature, I suspect he's exactly the type of person who, if you were to have a conversation, he would say something like, listen, do you know the only other time that fucking 666 is used in the Bible, okay? Do you know when it is? Do you know when it is? It's Solomon. It's Solomon. Solomon, okay? Solomon says that he got 666 talents of gold, okay? That's the other 666. Nobody ever talks about that in terms of the briefcase, okay? That's what it is. And I can even hear Tarantino saying that. So there's your one Tarantino. And that's difficult because I want to keep saying bad words when I do a Tarantino impression. Like when Jimmy comes over, or excuse me, when they go to Jimmy's house, and he's like, listen, when you came, did you see a sign that said dead wigger storage? Okay? No, you didn't. You know why? Because there's no fucking dead wigger storage here, okay? I'm shutting your butt down. I'm shutting your butt down, okay? Because that is the best. The funniest scene is the Jimmy scene, if you've not seen it, by the way. I didn't remember any of this because, again, I haven't seen Pulp Fiction in probably 20 years, 15 years. But this will make you laugh really hard, this scene. So, yeah, thank you. I'm glad you guys like that. It's a little off because I'm not in the mood for impressions at the moment, but I force myself to do the Tarantino because how could you not do a Tarantino impression when we're doing this, right? This part is actually really funny, I have to say.
Knock it off, Julie.
What?
I don't need you to tell me how fucking good my coffee is, okay? I'm the one who...
Okay. You can watch the rest of this sequence. I don't want to get my channel in trouble because of all this crazy wackos out there, but this scene is actually really funny, so I encourage you to watch that scene. Glitchy Rhythm, $10. I just became a member. I'm absorbing all the sweet bonus goodies all day long. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm to get yourself a super education by becoming a member or at the website becoming a member. Is Brad Pitt the ultimate white boy swag? White boy swag. You know what? I just don't like Inglourious Bastards. Inglourious Bastards is good, but Tarantino is overrated. Reservoir Dogs is the best. I don't like Inglourious Bastards at all. I think it's a terrible movie. It's some kind of weird revenge fantasy against Germans. I just don't think it's very good. And like I said, I like all the ones that people don't like. So I like Jackie Brown. I like Kill Bill. I mean, Beatrix Kiddo is another iconic character. And I think Uma Thurman did that really well. I kind of wish he had made Kill Bill 3 because we had these promises for so long that when I forget the black girl's name, that when she got to be old enough, the story was, right, Tarantino promised that Kill Bill 3 would have the young black girl who watches the fight between, I just went blank, whoever, is it Vanessa Williams? It's not Vanessa Williams. Whoever is in the first Kill Bill when they have the fight scene, that supposedly there was going to be a part 3 when she got to be old enough, but then I think he said that that'll never happen, so I don't know why, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is good. I like it better than Inglourious Bastards. Yeah, Kill Bill is masterpiece. Kill Bill is peak. Hateful Eight was great. I liked Hateful Eight. It was good. Vernetta Green. Yeah. I wonder why he decided not to make that. Vivica Fox. Thank you so much. Yeah. So Vivica Fox. Yeah, you could have Zendaya playing her grown up, exactly. And then she wants revenge on Beatrix Kiddo. Supposedly it's because Tarantino injured Uma Thurman's back. Oh, interesting. I'm just catching up on some of y'all's comments. Another couple of details I thought were funny was also the not just the fact that they are having an argument about foot massages, which is funny given the stories of Tarantino, right? But the katana blade. Do you notice that when Bruce Willis decides to get revenge on the rednecks that own the pawn shop? By the way, why are there rednecks in an LA pawn shop? I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. That's another thing that I thought was really kind of out of place and made no sense. But, you know, the disgusting scene with the gimp and all that, that could have all just been left as implied. That would have been a lot better had they not shown that stuff. That was kind of gross to me, but yeah. Anyway, the rest of it, I think, you know, the cinematography was really good. I think the reason he was going for that pithy dialogue was that older films had to be dialogue driven, and I think he was trying to say we need to go back to some kind of a dialogue driven film. I don't know that his dialogue achieved what you can find in older, you know, Cary Grant movies or Jimmy Stewart movies that are very dialogue driven, like His Girl Friday or Philadelphia Story. Those older, you know, 40s, 50s era films that if you didn't have stars and you didn't have dialogue, you didn't have a movie. And it's just very interesting that how far movies shifted by the 90s, that they were less and less star power driven and less dialogue driven. But I think a lot of people nowadays, if they tried to sit and watch a bunch of 40s and 50s films, especially 40s, they would have a hard time watching it because they wouldn't. I mean, there's no explosions. There's not, you know, crazy violence. It's acting and dialogue driven. They're not even that story driven. You know, the plots of movies, especially in the 40s, were very simplistic. So there was still at that time a lot of music. The movies were very music driven. So if you saw La La Land, that was actually trying to be a tribute to, you know, 30s and 40s era Hollywood with the musical numbers. Most of the actors and actresses were expected to sing and dance. So, you know, like a Joan Crawford or a Fred Astaire, the expectation was that if you studied theater, you also studied music and dance. And so you could sing and you could dance, you could do all that. And, you know, you don't really, it's weird. You just don't even have that anymore. It's just so different the way Hollywood evolved. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, there are some outliers. So Clontarf says movies like Network were heavily dialogue driven. Yeah, that's true. And I think that's what Tarantino was going for, was a dialogue driven film. And obviously Reservoir Dogs was that too. And he wanted that for Pulp Fiction. He probably wanted that in all of them, but I don't think that, you know, for whatever reason, the dialogue driven sequences in Pulp Fiction are just so, I mean, they're quoted into oblivion, and, you know, they're so well known. But I'm not sure that they're actually that profound. If you go back again and watch it, to me, it seems very forced and just... The only thing I can appreciate about that is that the dialogue between Vincent and Julius begin mundane, and they end up in a theology debate. So that I didn't remember, and I thought that was actually pretty good. So that's my take. Also, I should have mentioned too, there was I'd forgotten about the fact that you have organized crime essentially saying that you have to throw the fight, right? So basically, Marcellus Wallace represents organized crime, telling Bruce Willis that you're going to throw this fight, and I'm going to pay you enough that you're going to do it. Sports is fake and gay. So if we could give another point to Tarantino, he was telling us sports is fake and gay back in the 90s. And nobody in the 90s thought about sports as fake and gay, though. So maybe this is another point that we could give to Tarantino for pointing out that, is sports really what it appears to be, or is that what normies think? And sports is actually rigged by organized crime. Absolutely. I would say so. Those are my thoughts on Pulp Fiction. I don't know what you guys think. Did you guys like Pulp? Yeah, exactly. Think of my sports hole video. It's soft disclosure that sports are fake and gay. Yeah, I mean, Marcellus Wallace is kind of like, I was like, he's like a Don King character, isn't he? Right? It's almost like Don King with Mike Tyson, right? If you remember in the 90s. Because didn't it come out that Don King was throwing fights too? Or there was some kind of a shady bunch of nonsense going on with Don King in the 90s. And seems like Don King was also, wasn't he Mike Tyson's promoter for some period back in the day? Storm the Cat, $5. Star Wars is in 1977, was considered extremely fast-paced, but by Zoomer standards, it's very slow. That's a good point, yeah. Could you imagine Zoomers trying to watch 1940s movies? Imagine them trying to watch, some of these like noir classics. By the way, we did a stream that I thought was pretty good that I guess just people just don't even know this stuff anymore. It's like another world if you start talking about noir and neo-noir films. Like right here, we covered Psycho, Sunset Boulevard, Fritz Lang, we called it Hell on Reels, Dark Noir, Character Studies, and Chaotic Evil. I thought this was a really great stream we did. And, for example, we did White Heat with James Cagney, and we did Edward G. Robinson, the one where he's on a ship. That one's pretty good. I think that today's youth and their attention span has been destroyed. So they might not even be able to enjoy some of these noir films. La La Land was similar to classic films, but not dialogue driven. Yeah, I mean, it was all about song and dance, right? I mean, that was supposed to be pointing out the fact that element seems to have been lost. Don King was in with the mob. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting. And I mean, that's interesting. So Tarantino probably took inspiration from Don King for Marcellus Wallace. So Angel with Dirty Faces. Yeah. I mean, that's what's referenced in Home Alone, right? In Home Alone, it's a version of Angels with Dirty Faces, but I actually think White Heat is really good. I mean, White Heat was ahead of its time for chaotic evil villains. Like I don't think anybody in the 40s had ever seen a villain that was like pure chaotic evil, by the way. Guys, I want to remind you to head over to choq.com, choq.com, the best in supplementation on the internet. That is our sponsor, choq.com. And if you head on over to Choq, you can get access to all of these great supplements, including the Performance Stack, the Male Vitality Stack there. Use the promo code JAY40 to get 40% off that. But if you want a better discount, you can use JAY44LIFE. That's J44Life to get 44% off all those great products. By the way, I'm a little bit disjointed, but I meant to say that the katana blade that Bruce Willis gets seems to maybe foreshadow Kill Bill. I don't know if you noticed that little Easter egg there. But anyway, head over to Choq. And also, I wanted to give a shout out to our friends over at Flip City. They're also friends with our buddy, Quite Frankly. Flip City does a great magazine that's it's more, maybe a little more mature version of Mad Magazine. They like to do a lot of spoofs, a lot of satire. It's a great publication if you like kind of classic Mad Magazine style stuff, but maybe a little more advanced, not as kid-ish. And, of course, Flip City Magazine did an interview with me, feature story of me a few years ago. So shout out to Flip City. Go check them out. They always are generous enough to send me the latest issues of Flip City magazine. So I wanted to thank those guys and apologize because I forget to give them shout outs. But they're definitely kind of in our vibe if you like the kind of stuff that I talk about. And if you remember, I mean, what's more 90s than Mad Magazine, right? And Flip City magazine is kind of like the continuation of the vibe of Mad Magazine. Jack asks us $5. I forgot to ask you, do you feel that JF did something unaliving to his wife? He was not good in that debate. Whoa, buddy. I have no idea about that. I mean, I'm not going to accuse anybody of something without evidence. I mean, I haven't kept up with JF, but I don't know anything about that. Listen to sleep. What does that mean? You know, one thing I've realized too, as you get older and as when you get more mature, hopefully, and when you see people pass away and this kind of stuff, and also, on the internet, a lot of people will push rumors and start gossip, and they'll accuse people of stuff with absolutely no evidence, and they don't know anything. I'm not saying that I have no idea what's going on in that scenario, but like, for example, in my case, like, just like the stupid crazy stuff, or like Father Deacon Ananias, like the FDA, the crazy, like, he made a joke one time and somebody tried to say that because he was saying that there was refugees from Ukraine, that he would try to put the single guys in his church with Ukrainian Orthodox girls, and somebody said, oh, look, he's involved in human trafficking. Just completely absurd, like made up lie rumors from a joke. And people have tried to do that to me too. Like, I made a joke 10 years ago in a comment, and the trad cats still share this, like, as if I'm some sort of like drug lord because I made it's like an obvious joke 10 years ago in a YouTube comment. So I mean, people on the internet are just completely stupid for the most part. So that's why you have to be very careful about information and what people say and like how stuff regurgitates on the internet, because most of the time it's completely stupid and obviously not the case. So I want to be a lot more cautious, I guess, what I'm trying to say about, that kind of stuff, and accusations about people, and just because the internet's such an easy engine of like ridiculous gossip and like made up nonsense. So anyway, thank you guys so much. If you like this, leave me a comment below, and tell me what else you'd like to see analysis of. Also, if you guys are not owners of this amazing book, be sure and head on over to jaysanalysis.com, and you can get signed copies of Esoteric Hollywood 1 and 2, the best in movie analysis in terms of books that you can find. Esoteric Hollywood 3 is progressing pretty well. Like I said, I've got about 340 pages now, so hopefully we'll have 400 pages in the next couple months, and I can get that to the publisher, and you guys can look forward to getting your signed copies of Esoteric Hollywood 1, 2, and 3 from the shop at Jay's Analysis. Thank you guys so much. Would you like to see more esoteric analysis of Tarantino films? Or should we move on to something different, like maybe the Palma films? What do you guys think? Tell me below what movies you want to see me analyze. If you would, though, check before you write your ideas, because most of the time when people request a movie, we've already done it. So if you go and look and see in the search, or search the channel search on my channel, and you don't see the movie that you'd like to see analyzed, then go ahead and leave me a comment below for what movie you'd like to